Welcome back, guys. I trust you've been staying safe. Now, there are two schools of thought as far as hustling for money is concerned. There are some who believe that money runs the world and money is everything. And there are some who believe that money is important, but money is not everything. There are other things which are equally important, but are not directly linked to money, one would argue. But then, what would make somebody who has made all the money resort to extreme forms of terrorism in his own country? What will drive a multi-millionaire to decide that on this day I'm going to carry out actions that will result in the deaths of over 77 people? This is the story of Anders Behring Breivik, the multi-millionaire who decided that it was time in his young adult life to carry out an extensive attack he had planned over several years, which would end up claiming over 77 lives. If you are ready for this ride, buckle up and let's go. Anders' story is a very delicate one. It is reported that Anders had a very difficult childhood, right even before he was actually born. His challenges started whilst he was in the womb of his mother. It is reported that whilst Anders was in his mother's womb after her first trimester, Anders' mother decided that maybe she should abort him because apparently Anders had been kicking her so much. She felt that Anders didn't really care so much about her well-being and was just a problem for her. Unfortunately for her, however, and maybe fortunately for Anders, she had already gone past her first trimester, so an abortion was actually impossible and unsafe to get carried out. So she really didn't have a choice and had to go through the full term of the pregnancy and give birth to Anders. Fast forward after childbirth, it is reported that Anders didn't really receive much love from his mother because of that ill feeling that she had for him at the time of her first through to her third trimester. It is reported that Anders therefore had a very difficult childhood, especially so also since his parents had separated very soon after he was born, and Anders had ended up staying with his mother, who, as already mentioned, was not fond of him at all, despite he being her own child. Mind you, Anders' mother had a first child, a girl, when she was in her teens, so Anders was actually her second child, but this time it was her first child being married to a man. I hope you get it. Fast forward. There was turbulence brewing between Anders and his mother. Much of it wasn't from Anders because he was young, but everything he did suggested to his mother that Anders is just confirming to her that he is a problem, a thorn in his flesh. Therefore, it is reported that Anders suffered a lot of abuse from his mother, mainly emotional and psychological abuses. And this was picked up by the social welfare system, with social workers actually advising that it would be good for the young lad if he was separated from his mother, because it appeared that Anders was going through a lot of abuse under her. Unfortunately, all their appeals and advice fell on deaf ears, and the torture and abuse of Anders continued. Anders' mother never really had any good thing to say about her son, and when Anders got to the age of being able to understand the meaning of the things his parents would say about him, especially his mother, you could tell that it was affecting him to the point A psychologist is reported to have having said that a study of Anders had revealed that he was faking to be happy. He was smiling, but his smiles were not linked to his emotions. He was not smiling because the happiness was coming from within and then emanating outside in the form of a smile, but rather he was smiling pretensively because he had learned how to react to certain things around him. So he had learned that if somebody does this, okay, then I have to smile so that it looks like I'm happy about it, or at least it makes the person happy and the person might think I'm grateful. That is how this guy was developing. And the appeals renewed again that it would be good for this young boy if he was taken away from his mom. Unfortunately, the several insistence from these institutions was not heeded, and Anders continued to be with his mom. At a point, it is said that Anders was to be sent to a foster home, and a couple had decided to take him. And when Anders's mom was to present Anders to them, upon meeting them, Anders's mom is reported to have told the couple, or the man in the couple, or the male of the couple, that she advises that he takes out his penis to compare or to show to Anders so that Anders would have something he can compare with to know who he is. Because throughout Anders's whole life, he had been used to rather see that of women. Or if you are confused or disgusted about this, you are not the only one. It's really disgusting that a mother would say this about her son to a group of parents who are trying to take him up and give him a better home. But in fact, this is evidence of how twisted Anders's mom is. And over time, you will begin to understand how this would end up robbing of him and setting him on a path of destruction. It's not clear how this eventually ended between her mom and the couple who were seeking to adopt him, but Anders ended up still being with his mom, and it continued as such. Life went on, and things were no different from how they had started. Anders was still going through these same challenges with his mom. Now, going through his teenage years, Anders decided to join the army. Unfortunately for him, he was exempt from conscription to the military service in the Norwegian army, and he had no military training. The Norwegian Defense Security Department, which conducted the vetting process, said that Anders was deemed unfit for service at the mandatory conscript assessment. This was a big blow to Anders, but after the age of 21, he worked in the customer service department of an unnamed company, working with people from all over the world, and their feedback on him was that Anders was actually kind to everyone. I stand to be corrected, but I believe that was him still pretending, having learned how people react or how he should react to certain behaviors from people to get them to be happy with him and like him. So I think he was actually doing so well with the pretense now. A former co-worker described Anders as being an exceptional colleague, while a close friend of his said that he usually had a very big ego. Now, Anders was still growing, and his problems were still with him. Mind you, he never got the needed help he needed so badly at the early childhood stage to free him from the negative effects of the things he was undergoing in the hands of his mother, and he had now grown with it. According to some friends, Anders had cosmetic surgery on his chin and nose and forehead while in his early 20s, and he was pleased with the results. So Anders was actually very particular about how he looked, and he had a very big ego. He was trying to come off his own and be himself, not to be kicked around by somebody like his mom, to show that he is a man of his own and he can run his life for that matter. But little did people know what Anders was going to do, because in the few years to come, Anders would show who he had become to the world. Fast forward, the year is now 2002, and Anders is still working at a customer service company, but then he formed his own computer programming. Little did people know that this was the beginning of a 9-year plan, which will culminate in 77 people getting killed. Anders claimed his company grew to 6 employees and that he had several offshore bank accounts, and that he made his first million at the age of 24. He wrote in his manifesto that he lost 2 million krona on stock speculation, but still had about 2 million krona to finance his attack. This attack would manifest in 2011. So, going through 2002, the company was later declared bankrupt, and Anders was reported for several breaches of the law. To save money, Anders moved back to his mother's home. Now, you remember his history with his mother, but it looks like it had become his only safe zone. Don't think he didn't have a relationship with his father, he did. But at this point, his father had already remarried and also had another family, and his attempts to take Anders from his mom had failed. So it's like Anders was stuck with his mom, so to speak. Now, the first set of psychiatrists who evaluated Anders during the trial reported that his mental health deteriorated at this stage and he entered a state of withdrawal and isolation. Anders declared assets in 2007, and these assets were about 630,000 krona, the equivalent of 76,244 US dollars. And according to Norwegian Tax Authority figures, that is what it is, the equivalent of $76,244. Anders claims that by 2008, he had about 2 million krona, the equivalent of $243,332, and 9 credit cards, which gave him access to about 26,000 euros in credit. In May 2009, Anders founded a farming company under the name Breivik Geofarm, which was described as a farming sole proprietorship set up to cultivate vegetables, melons, roots, and tubers. In 2010, Anders visited Prague in an attempt to buy illegal weapons. He was unable to obtain a weapon there and decided to use legal channels in Norway instead. So now you would see that Anders is escalating gradually with a bit of intelligence to it. Anders bought one semi-automatic 9mm Glock 34 pistol legally by demonstrating his membership in a pistol club in the police application for a gun license, and the semi-automatic Ruger Mini 14 rifle by possessing a hunting license. Anders' manifesto included writings detailing how he played video games such as World of Warcraft to relax, Call of Duty, Modern Warfare 2 for training simulation. He told the court in April 2012 that he trained for shooting using a holographic weapon sight while playing Call of Duty. He claimed it helped him gain target acquisition. And by this, not subscribing to the fact that these games promote violence, I myself have played Call of Duty so many times, and here I am. I haven't shut up anybody. I really enjoy that game. I think its age restrictions are on point, and this guy here is just already twisted and sadistic. It's not a game that had him corrupted in any way. Now, Anders had not declared income in 2009, and his assets amounted to about 390 krona. That's 390,000 krona, the equivalent of 72,063 US dollars. Now, enter 2010, and his funds were depleting gradually. On the 23rd of June 2011, a month before his attacks will finally unfold, Anders paid the outstanding amount on his 9 credit cards so he could have access to funds during his preparations. In late June into early July 2011, Anders moved to a rural area south of Asta, about 140 kilometers northeast of Oslo, to site his farm there, and according to his manifesto, he used the company as a cover to legally obtain large amounts of artificial fertilizer and other chemicals, which he would then use for the manufacturing of the explosives. You see his intelligence playing out there. A farming supplier sold Anders' company 6 tons of fertilizer in May, and it was reported that after Anders bought a small quantity of an explosive primer from an online shop in Poland, his name was among 60 other names that were passed to the police security service by the Norwegian Customs Service as having used the store to buy products. So you would expect that something would have been done in that regard. Now, when investigations started, Anders' farmer neighbor described him as looking like a city dweller who wore expensive shirts and who knew nothing about rural ways. He also said that Anders also covered up the windows of his house, and I think it was because he didn't want people to see what he was doing inside. So this guy had sat down to draw up a plan, and he was seeing it through. I guess you are now ready to find out what Anders did. Having gone through all these deliberate efforts to ensure that he has the money to finance the plan, he has the tactical advantage of surprise, and that the plan is going to go unimpeded and yield the results that he was looking for. Anders was now ready. On the 22nd of July 2011, Anders detonated a fertilizer bomb outside the tower block housing the office of Prime Minister Jens Stoltenberg in Oslo. This bombing resulted in 8 deaths. Within a few hours of the explosion, Anders traveled quickly to the Utøya Island, which was the site of a camp for Workers' Youth League, and he posed as a police officer in order to take the ferry to the island. And then, when he got there, he fired intermittently into the crowd for more than an hour, killing a total of 69 people in that case, with one of the murder victims being as young as 14 years old. So, adding the 8 victims from the bombing to the over 69 people killed in the shooting, that brings the death toll to 77 people. When the Police Tactical Unit Delta, based in Oslo, arrived on the island and confronted him, Anders surrendered to them without any resistance, and after his arrest, he was held on the island and interrogated throughout the night before being moved to a holding cell in Oslo. Anders admitted to the crimes and said the reason of the attack was to save Norway and Western Europe from a Muslim takeover, and that the Labour Party had to pay the price for letting down Norway and the Norwegian people. After his arrest, Anders referred to himself as the greatest monster since Kesslin. So, you see how things have unfolded now. If you look back, the negativity around him, the bitterness around him, the absence of love around him seems to have culminated to create this man who only sees himself as a monster despite the money he had. So it's leaning more towards money is not the only important thing, but it doesn't end there. He was booked and prepared for trial. On the 25th of July 2011, Anders was charged with violating paragraph 147A of the Norwegian Criminal Code, destabilizing or destroying basic functions of society and creating serious fear in the population, and both of these charges are acts of terrorism under Norwegian law. Anders was ordered and held for 8 weeks, the first 4 in solitary confinement, pending further court proceedings. The custody was extended in subsequent hearings, and his indictment was ready in early March of 2012. So, things were heating up for Anders, and it looked like he was not going to get any mercy. The Director of Public Prosecutions had initially decided to censor the document to the public, leaving out the names of the victims, as well as details about their deaths. Due to the public's reaction, his decision was reversed prior to its release. And on 30th of March, the Court of Appeal announced that it had scheduled the expected appeal case for 15th of January 2013, and that it would be heard in the same specially constructed courtroom where the initial criminal case was tried. Anders was kept at Ila prison after arrest. There he had at his disposal 3 prison cells. One where he could rest, sleep and watch DVDs and TV. A second that was set up for him to use a computer without the internet, and a third with gymnasium equipment. Only selected prison staff with special qualifications were allowed to work around him, and the prison management aimed to not let his presence as a high security prisoner affect any of the other inmates. So Anders was cut off from people so that he wouldn't spread anything negative to others. It's as though he was treated like a disease. Subsequent to the January 2012 lifting of letters and visitor censorship, he received several inquiries from private individuals. Now, it didn't end there. Anders showed who he really is, even at this difficult or seemingly difficult time for him. He decided that he was not even going to compete the charges that were leveled against him. In his mind, he felt that that wasn't anything that he needed to consider as serious. He said that if he decided to appeal the conviction that had been placed on him, he would be giving the court legitimacy, and that he didn't even recognize the court as being legal. So he was not going to legitimize them by appealing to them for the charges that have been leveled on him. Now, it shows you how defiant or seemingly defiant this gentleman or this guy had become. He just decided to do the time, and he was not going to legitimize this court or the authority or whatever gave it authority by trying to appeal. He has done 10 years, and under Norwegian law, after doing 10 years, you actually qualified to seek an appeal, but his was also not granted because in the first place, he hasn't really shown anything that would warrant an appeal being given. So, to date, Anders is still in jail. We wait to see how things will turn out. But we find this a bit saddening because it's as though he's a product, or he became a product of his home. For me, I'm no expert, I'm no psychiatrist, but I believe that somewhere in the mix of things that culminated to make Anders who he turned out to be, I think his mother's negative influence can be found in that mix. But then again, it's also not an excuse. He is a fully grown man who is responsible for his actions. We wish the families of the loved ones, 77 specifically, who were lost in his attacks and his bad deeds, the strength to move on. We wish these 77 people a peaceful rest. And for Anders, well, he's still facing the justice. But our appeal to all parents out there, the love that we show our young ones can go a long way to make the difference in their old age. It's not always about the money. I subscribe to that school of thought. There are other things that are really important, like caring, like love, like empowering your children to believe that they can stand for something good, and teaching them how to take their frustrations out without hurting people. Subscribe to the channel if you already haven't done so. We are so happy with the support you are giving us. If you are a returning subscriber, we appreciate you. Leave a comment. If you are somebody watching this video but you are yet to subscribe, please do us the favor of just hitting the subscribe button and turning on the post notification button as well. We would love to have your comments as feedback on our videos. Catch you another time. Till then, stay safe out there.